Alrighty, hey everyone. Welcome. We are currently live now. For those of you tuning in, I'm just watching the Eubank Avdian fight. Currently in the second round, which is coming to a close. And no, but both fighters currently displaying some good skills. I mean, Avdian's obviously got quite a good record himself, even though he wasn't originally. Oh, well, okay, no, it's just a slip right now. I haven't even just hit the cameras, but it looks like it was just a slip. Um, yeah, okay, that's the end of the second round. So basically, I've currently got it 10-10. They both displayed some good skills. I haven't really seen Eubank necessarily um, coming out as the most dominant in this fight so far, just so that you guys have some statistics in front of you while we wait until the third round begins. The Eubank obviously was meant to fight Sven Elber, I think it was, and then tested positive for COVID, the German, and then he was scheduled to fight Anatoly Muratov, who I think we were going to cover that fight, but then that got postponed because Muratov failed a medical. And now obviously he's fighting, I believe it's Wanik Awdijan, who is a German fighter, I believe. I think he's got Armenian heritage. But it looks like an interesting fight because they've both got pretty good records. Obviously, we know about Eubank's record: 30 wins, 2 losses, only losses to Groves and to Billy Joe Saunders. And then Abdian's got 28 wins and only 1 loss. Although he hasn't probably faced as many, I guess German non-German fighters necessarily. Anyway, we're on to the third round, and I'll try and give some blow-by-blow commentary. And hey, Combat Core, welcome to the stream. So Eubank currently just coming forward right now, trying to, I guess, trying to push Avdian onto the ropes. We're both fighters now in the middle of the ring. Eubank again trying to come forward, trying to land the uppercut, just misses. Avdian looking quite quick on his feet, to be honest, bouncing around and running around the ring there, making it quite difficult for Eubank Jr. to try and close in on him. Oh, nice 1-2 by Avdian, who then decides to clinch Eubank. The referee breaking up the two fighters. Nice jab to the body by Eubank there. And Avdian just doing a good job, to be honest, circling around Eubank and trying to avoid his reach. Eubank is certainly coming forward though and trying to chase Avdian down. But Avdian seems to be doing a good job kind of boxing his way through. Or a nice left hook thrown by Avdian, which I think just brushes Eubank. What I'm currently seeing is that Eubank Jr. is trying to come forward more, trying to create chances for himself, and Avdian is just circling around the ring with 1 minute left of this third round, trying to stay quick on his feet and just trying to catch Eubank as he's coming in ultimately, or to throw his own punches. Oh, Eubank with some vicious shots to the body as he finally finds Avdian against the ropes. And Avdian manages to break off the ropes. Eubank goes head hunting with a few jabs, and Avdian manages to get out of harm's way. Referee breaks up the fighters after they had clinched there. Good bit of success for Eubank, and a nice left hook thrown by Eubank as well. But Avdian keeping a high guard to avoid any of Eubank's follow-up punches. He usually goes for a few uppercuts after the hooks. 18 seconds left of this third round, and Eubank Jr. has had some success there by pinning Avdian against the ropes, and I assume that's what he's been trying to do throughout this fight. He's had success there. Obviously, Avdian trying to avoid getting himself against the ropes. Avdian trying a 1-2 of his own just then, and Eubank staying out of harm's way. I think that's a 10-9 round to Eubank, so I've got Eubank up by 1. Eubank Jr., of course. Right, so it's interesting fight so far. I mean, it's a good good opponent for Eubank Jr. to fight. Avdian, like I said, he's got a good record. It seems to come across as quite a interesting, you know, interesting fighter to fight against. Interestingly, he's got what has he got? 6'2" in terms of height. According to BoxRec, it's quite tall for a middleweight. I would say. Um, Yeah, just some highlights there being shown by Sky Sports, which is where I'm watching the fight of Eubank managing to pin Avdian down against the ropes earlier in that third round. He had a lot of success there. Avdian kept a high guard, though, tried to avoid those uppercuts from Eubank Jr. All right, moving on to the fourth round, and I've got Eubank Jr. up by one right now. And then for those of you who don't know about the Fury Hammer fight, Hughie Fury's won that fight. So the fourth round is underway. Both fighters clinching each other. Referee stepping in. Eubank with some good lateral movement as he tries to walk forwards and close the distance between these two. Avdian again, nice and quick on his feet. Eubank Jr. with quite a wild left hook thrown, obviously misses. But Avdian is now gliding against the ropes. He ideally wants to get off them. Eubank Jr. just slowly walking forwards, trying to stalk Avdian down right now. He comes forward with a right hook, which is ineffective, and then a left hook, but then manages to tie up Avdian and push him onto the ropes. Avdian does a smart thing and tries to come forward into the center of the ring, keeping the clinch, and the referee decides to break up the fighters. 1 minute 40 of this fourth round. Eubank Jr. with a really wild left hook that misses. Both fighters not really having much success in this fourth round, to be honest. And Avdian again, as elusive as he can be, trying to avoid getting pinned down onto the ropes as Eubank Jr. continues to stalk. Ideally, Eubank Jr. should be using whatever skills he knows to try and cut the distance between these two fighters so that he can get to work. Simplest way would be to try and get him on the ropes, I would imagine. And Avdian finds himself on the ropes and eats a left hook and another left hook and then gets off the ropes. But Eubank Jr. again stalking him. A nice strong jab thrown by Eubank Jr. Keeping his head low, bobbing himself as he tries to move forwards. 40 seconds left of this fourth round. I think Eubank Jr. has had more success than Avdian. Or nice right hook thrown by Eubank Jr. Avdian keeping his left hook thrown by Eubank Jr. as well. And he looks very relaxed in there now, Eubank Jr. A nice uppercut thrown by Eubank Jr. But I think Avdian's, because he's kept his guard so high, he blocks most of those uppercuts coming through. And Avdian trying to come forward with something himself, but Eubank Jr. then doing some nice slick boxing and just staying out of reach. And that's the end of that fourth round. I give that round to Eubank Jr. That was a good round for him. So I've got Eubank Jr. up by 2. It's a good round. Good round for Eubank Jr. He's just done a good job just trying to keep low. Allow himself to come forward and cut off the distance, keep Avdian on the ropes, and then try and get to work. He did have a few bad bits in that round, which didn't make him look too good. And Sky Sports just showed one of them through slow mo, which was when he threw a left hook, which just went wildly missed. And you could see Avdian kind of chuckled to himself after noticing that. But he shouldn't be too happy, to be honest, Avdian, because he hasn't had much success himself in this fourth round that's just gone by, and he really needs to think about what he's going to do in the remaining 8 rounds of this fight. Because I found that in round 1 and 2, it was looking pretty even, but looks like Eubank Jr. is now taking over a bit more. So moving on to the 5th round now. Interestingly, Avdian looks like he's trying to come forward. which is different. Although, nah, just eats a right hook there, Avdian. I think Avdian's trying to trade with Eubank Jr. in the middle of the ring now. Eubank Jr.'s obviously been trying to stalk him for several rounds. And maybe Avdian's decided that he wants to try and go blow for blow, which might be a bad choice. Eubank Jr. just searching for Avdian there, got him against the ropes and threw a few hooks, but nothing really of much impact. Avdian finds himself in the middle of the ring again. Eubank Jr. is slowly stalking him. Eubank Jr. throws a left hook which connects, followed by an uppercut and a left hook again, but it looked all a bit sloppy because Avdian was moving all around the place and trying to clinch to him, so I'm not sure how effectual those punches were, but certainly looks like Eubank Jr.'s connecting more and doing more in terms of just having more success. Avdian hasn't really had much success so far in this fifth round with 1 minute 40 remaining. Both fighters clinching each other against the ropes. Referee breaks it up and they get straight back into the middle. 1 minute 30 left of this fifth round. Eubank Jr. tries to push Avdian against the ropes. Avdian just clinches. Referee breaks up the fighters. Both of them find themselves in the middle of the ring. Avdian with quite an interesting fighting style. He looks like he's a southpaw, even though BoxRec calls him an orthodox fighter. I mean, he looks like he's leaning on his right foot for most of this fight. So I don't know whether BoxRec have got it wrong, to be honest. Anyhow, not really much going on right now other than Avdian gliding across the ropes as Eubank Jr. tries to cut off the distance. Both fighters clinching, and Eubank Jr. with a short right hook followed by a left hook after the clinch. So nice success there by Eubank Jr. And Avdian looks like he felt that, or a vicious left hook to the body by Eubank Jr. as well. And you can see the marking on Avdian's right side of his face. And a short left hook thrown by Eubank Jr. But Avdian's still standing. He certainly looks like he's been marked by these punches that Eubank Jr.'s been throwing, and a nice right to the body by Eubank Jr. followed by a short right hook. He's had a lot of success in this round, and it just seems like he's starting to take over the fight. Avdian just dancing around the ropes there, and the bell rings to mark the end of the fifth round. I've got Eubank Jr. winning that round, so I've got Eubank Jr. up by 3. How are you guys finding this fight? Welcome if you're new. I'll be trying my best to give a blow-by-blow commentary. My name is Mo, and yeah, this is Quality Shot, where we cover various sports, mostly commentaries, but also we do interviews with different sports people, etc., etc. If you're interested in sports and sports commentary and things like that, and just chatting in live chats and participating in watch-alongs, yeah, do feel free to hit the like button. It would be much appreciated. What the frick, man? They just called off the fight. All right, they've called off the fight. Avdian is retired, I guess. I mean, let me just turn my sound up. The crowd is booing. Oh, Roy Jones Jr. in Eubank Jr.'s corner. Not surprised. Interesting. Very nice. Yeah, so Avdian has retired on his stool, it seems. Fair. I mean, fair. I mean, the crowd don't seem very happy. They probably want to see a knockout or something. They're kind of booing, but they give Eubank Jr. an applause because obviously he's done well. Eubank Jr. kind of shrugging to himself to the crowd and thanking them, and yeah, that's it. Eubank Jr. wins the fight. Fair dues. It looks like I think it's a win by retirement. I think it's RTD. So yeah, I'll listen to what they say after the fight is after the ring announcer announces what the result was. But I believe that was a probably around 6 RTD, I would imagine. So it's probably just Eubank Jr. wins by retirement. Well, Let me update the banner. So, Eubank Jr. beats Vanik Avdian by RTD. I would imagine it's RTD, but I'm going to listen in so you guys know exactly how he's won. But I assume it's RTD. Yeah. So retire. Yeah, that's it. So the referee accepted the retirement of Vanik Abdian's corner at the end of round 5. And so there you go. Eubank Jr. has won his fight. Okay, unsurprising to many, I assume. I'm sure loads of people assume that Eubank Jr. was going to win this fight. He's fighting a guy who is the replacement for a guy who was the replacement for a guy that he was meant to fight. So yeah, he's probably unlikely to have been fighting the best fighter that he could have been fighting. I think Vanik Avedian was ranked, according to BoxRec at least. I mean, BoxRec is what it is, but it's still useful. He was ranked 94th in terms of middleweight. So not the best middleweight, but like I said at the beginning of this stream, a nice record nonetheless. Um, and he seemed to be doing well, at least in the first and second round. It wasn't too much between them, but I could tell round 3, 4, 5. My view is that Eubank was up on all those rounds. He was just starting to take over the fight. He was doing a good job of just trying to get Avdian onto the ropes and to go to the body and to the head and land those hooks and follow up with those uppercuts. So he did really well. Um, and I think if the fighters had gone toe to toe, which is what Avdian's strategy was to avoid doing, I'm sure Avdian would have been dealt some serious damage eventually because I think Eubank Jr. just came across as much faster of the two and more heavy-handed. So unsurprised about the result. Well done to Eubank Jr. for winning that fight. And they're just having an interview now, so I might as well listen in and see what they're saying. There's Eubank Jr. standing next to Roy Jones Jr. It's a very nice pairing to see. Obviously, he's been trained by Roy Jones Jr. in many respects. Previously, was trained by his dad, the legend. Eubank Jr. just saying now that he. Oh, okay. So the background behind the retirement is that Avdian's rib was broken by a body shot that Eubank Jr. landed. Ouch. Okay, interesting. So Eubank Jr. was told that Avdian was orthodox, so he was training for an orthodox fighter, but then Avdian came out of southpaw, which makes sense because I was thinking, what the heck is this stance for an orthodox? Looks like a southpaw stance. Well, he is a southpaw. Interesting. Yeah, so Avdian's broken a rib as a result of the body shot that Eubank Jr. landed, so it makes sense that he's had to retire. It makes perfect sense. Um, and yeah, Eubank Jr. just saying that he was getting into the fight, he was enjoying it, but it's just a bit sad that the fans haven't seen everything and that he had to retire. But at the same time, it's understandable that he retired as a result of a broken rib because you can't really continue if you've broken your rib, have you? Anyway, just talking to Roy Jones Jr. now, the interviewer. Roy Jones Jr. just confirming that we should be prepared for anything, and probably referring to the fact that Abdian was actually a southpaw instead of an orthodox fighter, as they were expecting him to be. Roy Jones Jr. just praising Eubank Jr.'s ability to to fight Avdian with patience and not to go chasing for him necessarily, and to just land his shots, and how effective he was with those body shots. So Eubank Jr. just calling out Billy Joe Saunders again, and also mentioning that Liam Williams might want to fight him. So just mentioning that the Welsh middleweight currently ranked second in the UK. So yeah, he's just flagged those two fighters, and they're just speaking to his promoter. S- Yeah, so just mentioning. Yeah, there you go. So the two names that they mention is Billy Joe Saunders and Liam Williams. So maybe we'll see those two pop up against Eubank Jr.'s name in a fight near you. It'd be very interesting to see BGS versus Eubank Jr. too. That would be an interesting fight. Obviously, Eubank Jr. having lost his fight to Billy Joe Saunders earlier, and Billy Joe Saunders just coming off a loss to Canelo. So I wouldn't mind seeing that fight. Sounds like a good one. But also wouldn't mind seeing the fight between Eubank Jr. and Williams as well. Ideally, after those fights, he should start fighting some more world level, by which I mean fighters outside of the domestic scene, middle